Chapter 697. Don't go home, go to Grandpa's. A deep voice came from the back of the car. Assistant Zhang snapped back to his senses and turned the car around. Supreme Alliance's failure would always bring about some side effects. He Honghua had been on a business trip, but after watching the video, her first reaction was to go home. Of course, when they were discussing a collaboration, they looked at the team with more potential. The moment she saw the results, she apologized to He Honghua and chose Fu Zhongyi. At that moment, He Honghua's heart had been gripped by the youngster in the video. Without further discussion, she had brought her team back to Jiang City. Losses were unavoidable. To everyone, the word loss was not something that could be easily forgotten. Even when she closed her eyes, she was still staring at her wrist. She still wasn't strong enough. At the Feng residence, Feng Yi was still on the phone. Fortunately, that person's return had diverted the media's attention to a certain extent. Many of the fans were in low spirits. Even the Supreme Alliance members were the same. Lin Yun's family was very close. It was so close that Lin Feng arched a brow when he saw the figure sitting in front of the computer after his shower. He didn't use the main door. Instead, he opened the window and followed the railing to the balcony before knocking on that person's window. Yun, who placed the documents in his hands, down and walked over, pulling the floor-to-ceiling window open. "Aren't you afraid of the cold?" "Why wouldn't I be? I'm freezing to death." Lin Feng supported himself with his arms and jumped up. "Hurry, towel. My hair is still wet." Yun, who watched him. The collar of his t-shirt was pulled wide, the water from his black hair dripping onto it, making him look even fairer. Yun, whose eyes dimmed, tossing a towel over. Unfortunately, a certain someone didn't understand the principle of keeping a distance between men. He wiped his hair roughly and laid on the bed, looking extremely playful. "I'll sleep here tonight." Yun, who crossed his arms. "I'll give you a minute. Go back." "Don't be so petty," Lin Feng muttered. "We haven't slept together in a long time." Yun, who arched a brow. "Don't we sleep together in school? One above and one below, it doesn't count." Lin Feng sat up. He still looked handsome. "I'm not dirty. Why are you complaining? Besides, I know you're in a bad mood today. I'm here to comfort you." Yun, who looked at the person who had never cared about anything since he was young, but would jump in front of him at the crucial moment. For some reason, his heart softened. In the courtyard, there was no lack of fighting. He still remembered that this guy once saw him surrounded by people. It didn't matter if he was the one who hit the other or the other. He threw his backpack on the ground and pounced on the other party. In the end, his face was covered in bruises. "You're not allowed to bully Huzi. Scram." As long as he thought of that person's appearance at that time, Yun, who couldn't help but laugh. "You're really not leaving?" Lin Feng was very determined. "I'm not leaving." "Sure." Yun, who turned his handsome face over. "You should know that I can't control myself when I'm asleep." Lin Feng thought for a moment and asked in a low voice, "You still haven't gotten rid of your habit of having wet dreams the moment you fall asleep?" Yun, who glanced at the man, his gaze deep. "He won't recover. As long as this guy slept beside him, it wouldn't get better." This matter had to start from when they were 16 years old. That day, Yun, who was obviously drunk and couldn't control himself when he attacked a certain someone. Yun, who could still remember the expression on that person's face at that time. It was just a light kiss and his entire body had stiffened like a dumpling. He had looked at him as though he was looking at bacteria. That gaze was still fresh in his memory. He was afraid of the estrangement when he woke up the next day. The moment he opened his eyes, Yun, who asked calmly, "Did I do anything yesterday?" That person glared. "You don't remember?" "I remember I had a dream." The calmer Yun, who was, the tighter his grip became. He watched as that person heaved a sigh of relief. "You scared me to death." "It's fine, you just had a wet dream. I'll just treat it as a form of friendship. My first kiss is gone." F***ck, however, everything was an excuse. There wasn't any dream. He was just worried that he would be pushed away. Ever since that day, Yun, who understood where his tolerance was. Hence, when a certain someone hugged his pajamas and climbed over the wall to sleep with him, he immediately chased that fellow back home. "Why aren't we sleeping together?" That fellow had been asking him this question for an entire week. But very quickly, They were living in the same dormitory with different beds. I asked my mom to pull some strings. Why did you have to do so well in your exams? I crammed for a month before I managed to catch up. Now that we're in the same dormitory, let's celebrate. Shall we go overnight? That day, a certain someone was in the internet cafe, leaning on his shoulder and sleeping soundly. At that time, they had opened the first version of Hero. Hence, he didn't want to lose. I'll say this first, you can have wet dreams but don't touch me. Lin Feng tilted his head. I'm ticklish. Yunhu reached out to extinguish the light. This isn't easy to control. F***ck, think about it, I'm a man sleeping beside you, my thoughts would definitely be smaller. Lin Feng turned over. In an instant, the two handsome faces were extremely close to each other. Yunhu's eyes were on him. Lin Feng felt inexplicably uncomfortable. I have experience in this area. It'll be fine if you don't always think about girls. You have experience? What experience? Yunhu's voice suddenly turned cold. Who did you dream about? Lin Feng shook his head. Not yet, I haven't found a girlfriend. Why was he so fierce? Yunhu shut his eyes, his nose straight. Sleep, there shouldn't be any dreams today. Are you not in the mood after losing the competition? Lin Feng heaved a long sigh. Me too. If Little Spade wasn't around, Supreme Alliance would have lost even more miserably. He seems to be in a lot of pain. Why was he sent to the police station? If the media finds out, it would be another storm. Yunhu opened his eyes, dark and bright. With Captain around, this can be resolved. Don't forget, we still have the revival match. Of course I didn't forget. Lin Feng laughed. We will definitely revive successfully and continue to conquer the National League. Yunhu replied, closing his eyes again. Lin Feng glanced over, hugging his pajamas, no different from when he was young. The corners of his mouth were still curled up, and he didn't realize that the person next to him would kiss his handsome face after he fell asleep. How much gentleness was there in this world? How much was there to kick him when he was down? Ever since Shui Yaoyao entered the Jiang family, she hadn't heard the laughter in her ears. She and the Jiang family had always been incompatible. The Jiang family was in the entertainment industry and had more banquets than other wealthy families. Shui Yaoyao didn't know how her mother adapted. Just by sitting there, Shui Yaoyao felt a little tired. It was probably because she had lost the competition. That was why she was like this. Now, the moment she closed her eyes, the image of the youngster's left hand with a bloody wound appeared in her mind. 1 against 2. Those accusations. That person shouldn't have to bear it. If only she had been revived a little earlier. If she had revived earlier, the outcome would have been different. She knew that when she entered this industry, she was prepared to be loved and scolded. But she didn't understand. What was wrong with the youngster who had worked so hard and had never lost? Shui Yaoyao lowered her eyes and put something in her mouth, her mind clearly not on this. But there were also people who Han Susu knew. They chuckled softly. It's just a competition. It's fine if you lost. Why are you so pathetic? Cinderella has woken up from her dream, her only way out is gone. How can she not be pathetic? You don't know, the loser young Master Fu who argued with us because of this person was splashed with coke by his fans. He is so unpopular, how can he be the vice captain? It doesn't make sense for such a person to be the vice captain. Stop talking, be careful, our Yao Yao will flip out. The few of them laughed as they talked. They were like this because they knew that the fatty wouldn't do anything in such an occasion. However, it was obvious that they were wrong this time. Under everyone's gaze, Shui Yaoyao placed her tray down, walking towards the person who was closest to Han Susu. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was loud enough for everyone to hear. People like you don't understand how good that person is. Since you don't understand games, please shut up. The person paused, seemingly angered by Shui Yaoyao's actions. He opened his mouth. What is this? She really flipped out. I think a young miss like you should learn from a young age. Don't gossip about others behind their backs. Supreme Alliance's win or loss has nothing to do with you. My Zhou situation has nothing to do with you. When Shui Yaoyao said this, she obviously didn't care about the things she shouldn't say or the things that would put her mother in a difficult position. Because she couldn't protect that person in the competition, she had seen with her own eyes that the youngster had shouldered everything with a pale face. Outside the competition, she didn't want to hear anyone slandering the youngster. Jiang Zhua had been standing at the side, his hand still holding a glass of wine. When he heard Shui Yaoyao's words, he paused, his gaze empty. Mother Shui hurried over, pulling Shui Yaoyao to the side. I want to move out. Shui Yaoyao looked at Mama Shui. Mom, this place isn't suitable for me. I know that Uncle Jiang brought me here because he wants our family to be harmonious. If reporters find out that I'm living outside, they'll definitely write some nasty things. This time, I won't tell anyone. Mother Shui paused. She was experienced and had suffered. Yao Yao, this is the first time I'm hearing you say no. Isn't it important? The person you defended just now. MH. Shui Yaoyao wanted to tell Mother Shui that he was the person who had allowed her to return to school, but she had promised the youngster not to say anything. Mother Shui laughed. Someone you like? Shui Yaoyao blushed. This was a huge misunderstanding. She wanted to explain. Mother Shui fished out a stack of money, stuffing it into Shui Yaoyao's hands. You can move out, take this money. Mom, I... Before Shui Yaoyao could finish her sentence, Mother Shui cut her off. Mother Shui cut her off. It's not the Jiang family's money. It's the money from the previous stall. You've grown up. Don't think that I don't know about you running every day to lose weight. I'm living quite well with the Jiang family now, and your Uncle Jiang treats me very well. You don't have to worry about me here. Just buy whatever you need to buy. I've watched the video of your competition. My daughter looks really beautiful in the uniform. Mom. Shui Yaoyao couldn't help but reach out, hugging the warm person. Mother Shui patted her back. Do whatever you want while you're still young. I don't know anything. I used to think that gaming was useless, but after you lost yesterday, I realized that it wasn't just a game. It doesn't matter if you don't win the national championship, as long as you like it. Shui Yaoyao mumbled, afraid that she would cry. After keeping the money, she didn't cry, but her eyes were bright and clear. Even her back view when she left was tall and straight. Everyone was growing up. Growing up through failure. Only then would they become more indestructible. Outside the Jiang family's villa, Shui Yaoyao didn't expect to bump into Jiang Zhua, her brother in name, the moment she stepped out. She paused for a moment, wanting to walk around him. But she didn't expect to be grabbed by the wrist. He pulled her back harshly. You want to move out so badly? Jiang Zhua's voice was low, and it sounded heavy when one listened carefully. Shui Yaoyao glanced over. You don't want to see me either, just move out. Is it because I don't want to see you, or because of Fu Jiao? Jiang Zhua stared at her and suddenly laughed. He let go of her hand, stuffing one hand into his pocket, and said with a smell of alcohol, How much do you know about that person? You've become so bold, that person will never like you. Stop dreaming, listen to your brother, wash up and go to bed, understand? Shui Yaoyao smiled too. Everyone is telling me to stop dreaming. You're so fat, so you should be like this. I used to think so too in the past, but things changed. I met that person, so why can't I dream too? Because I'm poor, because I'm fat? Maybe I won't be like those girls you know. When they like you, they spend so much money on everyone and let everyone confess to you. I can't do that, because I'm not dreaming. I'm very sure that one day I'll become the person I want to be. When I meet the person I like again, I'll still do it the same way as before. I'll accompany and familiarize myself with him. Confessing is a person's business. I won't let anyone else do it for me. If he doesn't accept it, then forget it. I can't just wash and sleep. Jiang Zhua's hand in his pocket shook. He looked at the back of the figure that he thought would never leave before him. He clenched his fists tightly, so tightly that even his eyes were filled with coldness. Unknowingly, some things had gotten out of his control. Was this what she meant by like? Didn't she like him? Bang! Jiang Zhua raised his hand and punched the wall at the side. When the chauffeur rushed over, he saw this scene and called out hesitantly. Young master. Jiang Zhua tugged the tie on his suit and used it to wipe the blood on the back of his hand. He lowered his eyes and said in a low voice, Send Miss out and see where she stays. Yes. The chauffeur didn't dare to hesitate. He started the car and drove down the slope. When he saw Shui Yaoyao, He immediately stopped the car. "Miss, let me send you out. It's not safe at night." Shui Yao Yao didn't reject him. It wasn't easy to get a cab here. With the chauffeur sending her, it wouldn't be too cold. Just as she boarded the car, her phone rang. It was a voice message from Feng Shang, and he stuttered slightly. "Yao sister Yao Yao, where are you?" "I am with a uncle. We met for the first time at the internet cafe here. Are you busy?" "No, come over if you're not busy. A uncle said there's a training session for you and me." Shui Yao Yao's eyes lit up and she said, "I'll go over now." Come. Feng Shang pressed the phone. Train well, in the future. There won't be a need to be like today. Shui Yao Yao understood Feng Shang's feelings. Especially when the car passed by the huge square. There was an emotion that would become more obvious. At that time, she had never thought that she would become a professional player. But here, rose petals fell. The youngster held the uniform in her hands, smiling faintly as she handed their future to them. This time, it was time for them to work hard. The internet cafe was still bustling with business. Shui Yao Yao pushed the door open and walked in. Uncle Ian had a cigarette in his mouth, still looking decadent and handsome. "Hey, you're here, let's begin." Everything was the same as the first time they met. Everyone didn't change. Instead, they were even more certain of their future direction. The night deepened a few degrees. The villa in the south of the city. The lights were brightly lit. Old Masterin was undoubtedly happy. After all, he only had one grandson. He got someone to prepare a table full of dishes. When Qin Mo ate, he didn't act any different from usual. After the meal, the grandfather and grandson played chess. When the chess piece landed, Qin Mo opened his mouth. "Grandfather, I'm going to make a move on the Wu family." Old Masteran's fingers paused. "Make a move on the Wu family." "Yes." Qin Mo lifted his lids. He had always been respectful to the elderly. "I came to inform grandfather in advance. If there are no accidents, they will come to grandfather's place tomorrow. I don't want grandfather to hear any false rumors. I can tell grandfather first that no one is trying to sow discord. Wu Zhan's actions are enough for me to send her to court. My attitude won't change. I hope grandfather won't stop me when the time comes." Old Masterin looked at his grandson and let out a long sigh. "Wu Zhan likes you too much." I have never given her any response. Even in front of his grandfather, Qin Mo didn't have the slightest intention of backing down. "There is no love in this world that can be achieved by hurting the most important person to me. What I am doing now is a legitimate retaliation." Old Masterin knew he couldn't persuade him, so he didn't say anything else. After the age of 6, his grandson didn't follow him anymore. He knew some things had to be left to the younger generation to handle. Even if he personally liked Wu Zhen, he couldn't. But such a lifelong matter couldn't be forced. On the Wu family's side, he would think of another way. Old Masterin watched his grandson who was playing chess with him. "This child, other than being angered in America when you were young, you don't have any expressions at all when you grew up." Qin Mo glanced up. "When I was young." "When you were 5 or 6, have you forgotten?" Grandpa and seemed to have thought of something funny. He stroked his beard and laughed. "At that time, you were often pressed under the girl in the next room. You couldn't even move. You even said that when you became a police officer, the first person you would arrest would be her." Qin Mo thought for a long time, but it was still a blur. Old Masterin shook his head. "It seems like you really forgot. When she left, you were sad for a long time." "Sad? Him?" Qin Mo didn't comment. Grandpa smiled and said, "I just don't know where my old friend moved to. But the Bo family is so strange. They never stay in one place for a long time." "Bo." Qin Mo paused because of the family name. Old Masterin arched a brow. "Why? Did you remember something?" "No." Qin Mo just remembered Zi's surname, which was Bo. If they didn't talk about the Wu family, there would be fewer conflicts. After leaving the villa, Qin Mo glanced at his phone. It was empty. There was nothing on it. The profile picture on his WeChat was also very quiet. Perhaps he should give the youngster some time. Because once he opened his mouth, if it was a rejection, he wasn't sure what he would do. Qin Mo thought about what the youngster had said today. Brother Mo, I'm straight. And I will be in the future. Wasn't he straight as well? But he would be crazy to fall in love with such a person. The next day, the sun shone down on her body, warming her. Bo Jiu didn't go anywhere. Firstly, her relative hadn't left. Secondly, there wouldn't be any competitions for the next 7 days. She could rest and do some cover-up work. She knew that Wu Zhan hadn't found anything. If there was any concrete information, the crime squad wouldn't have done it. He was trying to find a reason to lock her up in there. If there was a second time, it would be troublesome. Hence, she gave her partner a call. Be my defense lawyer in the future, and I'll give you a piece of information regarding your ex-wife. Speak. Lawyer Bai wasn't a long-winded person, which was one of the reasons Bo Jiu admired him. The information shows that you have a 5-year-old child. Thank you for informing me so early. That 5-year-old child is in my law firm now. He asked me to stay away from his mother. The man tugged his tie, narrowing his eyes at the child in front of him. Bo Jiu smiled. Congratulations. We'll talk another day. If she didn't hang up now, how long would she be waiting for? After she was done with all this, when she was free, that handsome and abstinent face appeared in her mind again. She shook her head, glancing at the mirror. The wound on her lips hadn't healed. Even though it was thin, she could feel it with a single lick. She wiped it with the back of her hand instinctively. The youth's entire body also leaned backwards. Chapter 698. Afternoon. The Yin family villa. It was just as Qin Mo had said. Old Master Wu appeared on time. But Old Master Wu was smart. It should be said that people of their age understood that before they did anything, they had to think it over. He didn't bring Wu Zhan instead, he brought a box of good tea, saying that he wanted to chat with an old friend. Old Master Wu talked about many things. Most of them were experiences they had gone through when they were young. Old Master Yin listened, nodding from time to time, a smile on his lips. When the topic was about the same, Old Master Wu then said, once Zhen falls in love with someone, he will act rashly, to the point where he doesn't even have a chance to explain himself. I've spoiled him, but you know Zhen's character. Nothing had ever happened to these two juniors, but this time, Zhen had arrested one of his team members. That team member was probably a scheming person, and things had turned out this way. Olden, we've known each other for so many years, it's not worth it for a small team member. You've seen how Zhen treats Qin Mo, but there are some things that can't be helped. She chose to be a police officer because she wanted to be closer to Qin Mo, but who knew that things would turn out this way? Zhen doesn't have any ill intentions towards that member. She just brought him to ask some questions. If this makes Qin Mo unhappy, Zhen can apologize. Why do you have to take this to court? It hurts their relationship. After Old Master Yin heard the entire story, he finally said, Old Wu, let the younger generation handle their own matters. My grandson has always been indifferent since he was young, and I can't control his actions. Old friend, let me tell you something from the bottom of my heart. If Zhen really did something wrong, please stop. Old Master Yin wasn't muddle-headed. He had his own connections and judgment. Last night, after his grandson came, he contacted some of his old friends in Jiang City. Although he was a businessman, he wasn't involved in such matters. But he knew that the crime squad's most important case couldn't be handed over to a police station. Besides, after asking around, it was clear that the police station's director had received benefits from the Wu family. Therefore, it was clear at a glance what was going on. It wasn't without reason that his grandson would come at night. After all, his grandson had always been protective of the esports team. He definitely couldn't tolerate someone finding trouble with his team members. They even locked him up. Grandpa had specially watched the match this morning. He was injured, but he was still able to hold on until that point. He probably saw the shadow of his grandson in the young man. Therefore, Grandpa did not intend to intervene in this matter. As an old friend, I just wanted to give you a reminder. Old Master Wu did not expect to hear such an answer. It was impossible not to be surprised. However, he quickly calmed down and didn't reveal anything. His expression was different when he went out of Anne's villa. Wu Zhan was still waiting in the car. When she saw old Master Wu, she sat up straight. "Grandpa, how is it? What did Grandpa say?" Old Master Wu glanced at his granddaughter, lowering his voice. "The problem lies with Qin Mo. Olden can't make the decision. But Zhen Er, listen to me, you have to stop." Chapter 699. Old Master Wu couldn't bear to see his granddaughter in such a state. He shut his eyes. "Do you know why Grandpa wants you to stop? If your grandpa helps Qin Mo investigate the details of your mission this time, it won't be as simple as going to court. Your grandpa's attitude is clear now. He already knows some things and he doesn't want to help anyone. But you have to consider Qin Mo's capabilities. So Zhen stop." Wu Zhen wanted to say something. But her phone rang. It was Director Huang. Wu Zhen's face darkened the moment she received the call. It wasn't an ordinary phone call. It was a call informing her that from today onwards, she would be removed from the crime squad. Wu Zhen tightened her grip on her phone, her eyes heavy. She didn't want to be the one who violated the most basic principles of a police officer, especially a member of the crime squad. Instead, she pushed the blame onto someone else. She probably didn't like this job from the bottom of her heart. Wu Zhen wouldn't understand that her actions weren't worthy of wearing that uniform. After hanging up, Wu Zhen's eyes were venomous. "Grandpa, I worked hard for more than a year to enter the crime squad, but now I'm being kicked out because of that person. I won't let this matter rest. Grandpa isn't helping us now, but once he finds out what that person is thinking about Brother Mo, he will definitely help us. I'll listen to Grandpa and swallow my anger. I'll take a step back and when the time is right, I'll get back at him." Old Master Wu chuckled. "It's good that you think that way. Where there's life, there's hope. Once the storm blows over, everything will be fine." Unfortunately, Qin Mo didn't intend to let the storm blow over. He sent a lawyer to fight the case. Old Master Wu also made use of his connections. He had originally thought that Qin Mo was just a junior. But in the end he was wrong. Wu Zhen was stripped of her police license. If it wasn't for Old Master Wu's connections, she would probably be in jail for a few more days. A huge sum of money was spent, but it wasn't enough to protect his granddaughter's reputation in court. Wu Zhen wasn't convinced at first. Her status was there, and she knew very well what to say to turn this matter into a small one. When the judge questioned her, she only emphasized one point: "He's very suspicious, so I brought him to the police station to interrogate him. I'm just working on a case." The reason why Wu Zhen was fearless was because of the system. Unexpectedly, the opposing party's lawyer pushed his spectacles and said, "Arresting a suspect isn't wrong. We have never doubted Miss Wu Zhen's actions. However, the main point is that Miss Wu Zhen's actions were filled with strong personal emotions and caused actual harm to my people. My side has the right to sue Miss Wu Zhen for abusing her power for personal gain." When Wu Zhen heard this, her face turned pale. That was because she knew very well in her heart who was the one who came up with this excuse. "Big Brother Mo, you're too cruel." Wu Zhen's hands clenched and loosened. No, it wasn't Brother Mo's ruthlessness. It was the existence of some people that caused the conflict between her and Brother Mo. She couldn't even be a police officer because of it. This vengeance. Chapter 700. The traffic outside the window changed and the temperature started to change. Ever since the semi-finals, Bo Jiao hadn't shown her face. This worried Feng Shang, the money player in Zone C. He decided to sneak out when Feng Yi wasn't paying attention. His destination was the Fu family's mansion. Feng Shang was prepared to sacrifice himself to comfort his idol. Unexpectedly, his idol wasn't upset and was playing the little tyrant on the floor. Everyone must have played Super Mario before. His idol was playing seriously, a thermos bag in his arms and a glass of brown sugar water beside him. Feng Shang glanced at the glass of water. "This is... I knew you were coming so I cooked it for you. It's cold outside so it'll warm you up." The youngster placed the handle of the game on the floor, a devilish smile on her face. Feng Shang was touched, holding the glass of brown sugar water with both hands. Idol. You, how did you know that I like to drink sugar water?" Bo Jiao glanced up at the ceiling. She had overestimated her baby Feng's intelligence. "Drink it, there's more in the kitchen.
MMH.
Feng Shang nodded, his eyes bright. Bo Jiao seemed to have thought of something. She leaned forward, her left hand supporting Feng Shang's back as she pulled her face closer. In an instant, Feng Shang's face turned red. Oh idol you're not gay are you? You don't have a crush on me, right? Bo Jiao arched a brow. Feng Shang's eyes widened. Oh, how is that possible? I like girl.
Oh.
Bo Jiao knew what he was thinking. After asking, she retracted her hand. What did he mean by oh? Feng Shang stuttered as he tried to explain. I worship my idol, that's right, but I am straight. Especially straight. Bo Jiao watched Baby Feng's blushing face, muttering to herself, he's so popular but the Almighty isn't interested. How did he fall for her? Idol, what are you saying? Feng Shang wanted to listen carefully. Bo Jiao caressed his head, leaning over, her voice landing beside Feng Shang's ears. If I do this, will you kiss me? Feng Shang looked at the handsome face in front of him. It was so handsome that his heart skipped a beat. But that wasn't the point. Most importantly, his idol had taken a liking to him, and he wasn't gay. How do I solve this problem? I'm waiting online. Do you want to? Bo Jiao lowered her voice. Feng Shang couldn't take it anymore. He pushed her away and panicked. No, I don't want to. After rejecting him, Feng Shang regretted it. Did he hurt his idol's heart? Feng Shang glanced at the person on the ground. His idol seemed to be talking to himself again. Vaguely, she could hear a voice that was neither too high nor too low. Baby Feng is such an easy person to turn gay. Yet he didn't have any reaction. Then it's not my problem. He must have been gay from the very beginning. He was gay from the very beginning? Who? Feng Shang had a stomach full of questions. Also, what do you mean by Baby Feng is so easily turned gay? He was very straight. Fortunately, after this period of time, the idol finally returned to normal. He just sat lazily on the wooden floor, exuding a noble aura. Feng Shang let out a long sigh. He could finally drink his brown sugar water in peace. But what's wrong with my idol today? Chapter 701. Feng Shang couldn't figure it out, hence, he decided to approach from another angle. Where's the princess? Him. At the Almighty's house. Bo Jiao switched to another game, preparing to organize her thoughts. If the Almighty had been gay from the start and had fallen for her cross-dressing, how was she going to resolve this problem? Based on the Almighty's repulsion towards girls, if he found out that the brother he confessed to was actually a girl, Bo Jiao narrowed her eyes. Would he feel cheated? Feng Shang looked at the handsome face in front of him that was like that of a vampire aristocrat. He felt that he could probably understand his idol's feelings and empathized with him. When I was young, I also had a pet. If it suddenly left, it's true that I'm not used to it. Bo Jiao glanced up. Feng Shang straightened immediately. His expression serious. Teach this kind of thing, will be fine once you get used to it. Hey idol, you're young. Did you have other pets when you were young? Pets? When she was young. Suddenly, an image of a little boy appeared in her mind. He looked at her as though she was a germ. He was arrogant but he was just too adorable. She had always wanted to bring him home. Especially when she had pounced on him. The little boy had looked as though he wanted to tear her into pieces. He had been too adorable. But the little boy had been obedient. When she had touched him on the keyboard, he had merely glanced at her, allowing her to experience it herself. She had even fed the little boy before. Even though he had developed an allergic reaction, he hadn't said anything, allowing her to hug him to sleep. With that in mind, she spat out 2 words. Yes. Oh? Is that a cat or a dog? Feng Shang had wanted to discuss the fun and insights of rearing pets with his idol. Bo Jiao stood up, her lips lifting into a smile. Human. Human. Feng Shang jumped. How could that be considered a pet? Did his idol have a fundamental misunderstanding of pets? That night, the skies outside darkened gradually. There would always be offensive comments on the internet. Some of the club's shareholders approached Feng Yi, telling him that they had to pay attention to the image of their team members. After the loss, Many people lost confidence in Supreme Alliance. There's a variety show on a satellite channel that's targeted at esports players. Xiangnan's people will be participating as well, and the duration will be 2.5 days. Not only will they be able to leave a good impression on the audience, it won't affect the revival match 5 days later. The problem now is how to convince Boss Qin to participate. The other party is eyeing Boss Qin's popularity. If not, Supreme Alliance wouldn't have been invited even if they had already lost. In the past, Coco would have been able to attend such events, but it's obviously not possible this time. It's a variety show that showcases the teamwork between the team members. Both of them have to participate, and it's mainly up to President Qin. I don't think it's easy to say. Everyone in Jiang City knew that young Master Qin didn't participate in any interviews, let alone this kind of variety show. Feng Yi didn't think so. On the contrary, he seemed to have thought of something, his lips curving into a sly smile. 2 people are required to participate, and the journey is 2.5 days. Does it start from the moment they wake up? Most outdoor variety shows are like this. Feng Yi closed the proposal in his hands. I'll convince CEO Qin. The condition of sleeping together should be tempting enough. Chapter 702. Meow meow. It was rare to see anyone raise a cat like this. Beside the soft carpet, there were wine bottles. Then there were all kinds of electronic data cables. This was a rare toy for a cat. But everyone knew that Princess was too fierce compared to other cats. It always thought it was a tiger. It pounced at the pile of cables, but its face was too big and it got entangled. Meow meow meow. This was the scene Qin Mo saw after his shower. A cat with electronic data cables all over its body. According to Qin Mo's habit, he wouldn't care about it. With a white towel over his head, he opened the small fridge. Other than wine, there was also expensive mineral water. Princess looked at her overly handsome master. She watched as he unscrewed the mineral water bottle and tilted his head back to drink. His perfect abs and black hair dripping with water were really too sexy. If that strange guy saw this, he would definitely pounce on its master. So it must protect its master. Meow. Thinking of this, Princess waved its paw again. This time the whole cat died. Qin Mo, who was standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, was a little careless. His dark eyes were placed outside the foggy window until the water droplets from his black hair dripped on his fingers. Then he looked away and glanced at the number that hadn't rung yet. It had been 3 days since he kissed that guy. 3 days. Not to mention showing up, there wasn't even a message. Qin Mo lifted his lids and drank another mouthful of water. This time, his actions were slightly more ferocious. A cat was a very sensitive animal. As if it had sensed the cold aura emanating from its owner's body, the princess who had broken free cleverly took a step back. Just like that, it walked proudly beside its nest. Perhaps its owner wouldn't be in such a bad mood after appreciating its handsomeness. It could be said that Princess was thinking too much. Qin Mo didn't look at it. After the phone screen lit up, he tilted his head and lit a cigarette. With his upper body bare, he pressed the answer button. Say it. One word. Neither cold nor indifferent. Feng Yi was obviously used to the Almighty's style. There was still a smile at the corner of his mouth. There is a variety show on Orange Station. This station's ratings have always been the first in the country. The club's investors want CEO Qin to. Qin Mo was about to hang up when he heard that. Feng Yi was too familiar with this person's actions. He hastened his words. Simply put, there's a program that allows you to sleep with Little Spade for 2 days. Do you want to participate? The air froze for a moment. Qin Mo pressed the phone against his ear again, his voice calm. Time. What time? Feng Yi was puzzled. Qin Mo pulled the towel down, covering his black hair. He looked like an ancient prince. Time to participate in the show. CEO Qin, is it okay for you to change your attitude so quickly? Feng Yi couldn't help but ask. Was he too lazy to hide now? Qin Mo blew a puff of smoke and smiled. Young Master Feng, have I been treating you too well recently? Feng Yi wasn't as naive as Feng Shang. He knew that Qin Mo wouldn't have a good ending if he called someone short. Chapter 703. Qin Mo took a puff. Who arranged the script? Old Wei. Feng Yi tugged at his tie. I just had a drink with him and managed to get some information out of him. Qin Mo extinguished his cigarette. Your alcohol tolerance isn't at its limit. You don't know how much I can drink. How can I possibly reach my limit? Feng Yi was best at discussing business at the dining table. Qin Mo replied faintly, then let's go for another drink and get him to add more intimate scenes. Feng Yi. A request that caught him off guard. To think that it was such a request. Boss Qin, it's such a pity that you aren't an actor. Qin Mo sat down, his legs long. You flatter me. Let me make things clear. I'm here to help Little Spade gain popularity. Qin Mo arched a brow. Do you think he won't be popular with me? Yes, everyone knows you're the best in the game. You relied on your unbelievable skills to get this far. Qin Mo interrupted him. I thought I relied on my face to get to where I am now. Feng Yi. That wasn't wrong. Once the script is done, I'll agree to attend one more event, Qin Mo promised. It wasn't easy to get Almighty Qin to attend an event. It had to be done willingly. Feng Yi fastened his tie, resuming his role as an elite vice president. I'll get Old Wei to add in the intimate scenes now. Add in a lot more. He hung up. Qin Mo's gaze swept over another number. He even glanced at the WeChat profile picture. Since it wasn't enough, he would continue. When Qin Mo reached for the water, he paused abruptly. His gaze swept over his wrist, his dark eyes glistening like jewels, deep and unfathomable. The next day, the first call she received was from Lawyer Bai. I don't have to do anything about the Wu family anymore. Closing the documents, his spectacles flashed. It'll probably be difficult for Wu Zhan to enter the agency again, much less stay in the crime squad. If it was a local agency, she might be able to settle it with some money, but the crime squad is still the crime squad. Moreover, the Qin family seems to have made a move. As a business partner, shouldn't you tell me why the Qin family helped you? Bojo smiled. I'm a member of Supreme Alliance and Supreme Alliance belongs to the Qin group. Are you satisfied with this explanation? A perfect excuse. The man crossed his legs. But, high school student, do you think I haven't seen Supreme Alliance's official Weibo? It's full of lovey-dovey. In the past, Bojo could still confidently say that it was a brotherly relationship. Now, Bojo remained silent. Lawyers usually stop where they're going. This was especially true for those with the surname Bai. Bojo didn't have to think to know that the Almighty had taught Officer Wu a lesson. However, there were some things that Boss Bai was wrong about. It was because the key case investigation unit was different. The Almighty wouldn't allow anyone to use their power to destroy it. The reason why some people feared the crime squad was because it hadn't been corrupted. Officer Wu's actions didn't just challenge the bottom line. Bojo stood up, walking towards the machine and was about to head down. Her phone rang again. Chapter 704. Of course, Feng Yi wasn't going to tell the youngster about the program since it was arranged by the production team to make it more interesting. He smiled slyly. I'm informing you that there's a training in Lin City. Interprovincial training? Bojo arched a brow. The experienced manager Feng had already thought of an excuse. The loss this time will affect everyone's morale. Lin City has mountains and water and is located by the sea. It will reduce the pressure on everyone. Bojo retracted her long legs, giving up on the idea of going to the basement. When are we leaving? Today. Feng Yi raised his wrist to check the time. The company has already booked the ticket for you. There will be someone to pick you up in an hour. Pack your things and bring a change of clothes. The most important thing is to look good. Bojo glanced up nonchalantly. Dressing up is important for training now? It's mainly because you're too popular. It's inevitable that there will be fans fetching you. Feng Yi signed a document before chuckling lightly. I don't need to remind you about your image. Bojo sat down sloppily. Don't worry, I'll always be handsome. Feng Yi. It was no wonder the Almighty had taken a liking to her. In terms of narcissism, they were basically the same. Bring along your sunscreen. There won't be a gathering this time. Everyone will head out separately and meet at the hotel. Feng Yi wanted to say something but was afraid of leaking too much. That's all, I have work to do here. I'll hang up first. Wait for someone to fetch you. Sure. Bo Jiu had always been efficient. After hanging up, she opened a lollipop and placed it in her mouth before starting to pack her luggage. There were indeed some things she had to bring, especially the chest bandage. But fortunately, it was a request for today's training. If it had been 2 days ago, she would have found an excuse to avoid it. Lin City wasn't a bad place. But that was if she didn't go swimming. With this in mind, Bo Jiu decided to bring a short-sleeved black t-shirt and white shorts. Even if there was a seaside event, it was safe enough. Since the temperature in Lin City was high, there wasn't a need to bring heavy clothes. But there was a little. Since it was a training, she would have to meet the Almighty. The youngster paused. According to the Almighty's style, he probably wouldn't mention it if she didn't bring it up. Based on this understanding, she would slowly pull the Almighty back. But that would take some time. This time, as long as he didn't stay with the Almighty, everything else was fine. Crack. The luggage was packed. Bo Jiu glanced at her reflection in the mirror. There was nothing wrong with it. Feng Yi was reliable. He said that someone would pick him up in an hour. Time would never exceed that range. But after entering the car, Bo Jiu realized they looked unfamiliar. I've never seen you guys in the club. Are you new people? The reason he asked that was because there was another person in the back seat other than the driver. The two of them nodded hurriedly. Yes, he's a newcomer. When he reaches Forest City, he'll be one of us. Bo Jiu chuckled. Thank you. Not at all, not at all. I was just startled by your question, Big Spade. The two of them looked at each other and didn't dare to say anything. The car drove very steadily. Bo Jiu wasn't a talkative person. She wore a pair of pure black earrings and stared out the window. Chapter 705. They entered the airport, went through security and checked in. Bo Jiu stood in front of the cameraman while she was doing all this. No one would be able to tell from this angle. The scene was perfect. Especially when the youngster lowered his lids and smiled faintly as he thanked the staff. His back view was 100 points. The cameraman had a premonition that when this scene was shown on the big screen, it would definitely cause a bunch of fans to bubble with happiness. He had been in the industry for a long time and had photographed many famous celebrities. Even those in the industry didn't look as good without makeup as the youngster. More importantly, his attitude was different. The youngster didn't intentionally express anything. But it was precisely because of this naturalness that he stood out from the rest. But it would be a waste of words. He still had to rely on his face. The youngster was handsome, especially when he held the boarding pass in his mouth. If he added a pair of ears, he would definitely be handsome. It was a pity that he couldn't film to his heart's content. Bo Jiu didn't notice the cameraman's thoughts. In fact, most people wouldn't think they were filming a show. It wasn't the first time they were doing training. There wouldn't be any suspicions. There would usually be a coffee shop in the airport. Bo Jiu didn't forget to buy 3 cups when she wanted to drink. She hung the straw while glancing at the boarding gate. When it was time, she lifted the black luggage. From the beginning to the end, his actions were all very handsome. But the cameraman and storyboard director noticed that the youngster didn't seem to like talking. It was one thing to be polite and another to like to talk. Wouldn't this create a variety show effect? Ordinary viewers knew that they had to talk more when they were on the show. Only then would it be interesting. If Spade Z didn't say anything, what was there to watch? The storyboard director glanced at the hot cocoa the youngster had bought for her, her voice muffled. I haven't seen such a person in a long time. Those who had been in the industry for a long time knew what the director was talking about. The cameraman lowered his head with a smile. You want to support him? I'm just a small director. Who can I support? The woman laughed lightly. Actually, many people have bought drinks for me. After finding out about my identity, they treated me well. The cameraman nodded. He still doesn't know our identity. I investigated him. Fans splashed Coke on him. The woman flicked the paper cup. I thought he was the kind of person who looked good on the outside. That's why people hated him so much. Turns out, He's not bad. The cameraman's smile widened. With such an evaluation from you, even if he doesn't say anything, he'll still create a variety effect. Don't underestimate a storyboard director, especially one from a variety show. Whether or not they could become popular depended on their background and investments. But how could the audience like it? The storyboard director was an important role. The three of them got on the plane together. Bo Jiu glanced at her phone. She was about to send Feng Shang and the others a text to ask them when their flights were. When the cameraman saw this, he immediately said, "The plane is about to take off. It's better to switch it off." Bo Jiu didn't deviate from the norm. Although she always had her phone on when she was flying in a small plane overseas. However, there was a plane full of people here. Cooperating with others was the most basic form of respect. The plane took 2 hours from takeoff to landing. The hotel was also arranged. Chapter 706. This question. The cameraman choked. The storyboard director immediately added, "It's almost 11 p.m. You've been on the plane for a long time. Why don't you take a break?" "Sure." Bo Jiu smiled, her handsomeness seeping into the wood. But there was a change in her gaze. "Where's the training?" It was another question that caught him off guard. The cameraman replied instinctively, "At the beach first." "Gaming at the beach?" Bo Jiu arched a brow. "Is that part of Feng Yi's training? Isn't he afraid of distracting us?" The storyboard director smiled. "It's to train your concentration." Bo Jiu turned. "I'm going to take a shower and rest. You guys can do as you please." The cameraman heaved a huge sigh of relief. The storyboard director glanced at him without a word, grabbing the phone from the youngster on the bed. When Bo Jiu came out while drying her hair, she glanced at the empty bed. Her smile deepened. There was indeed a problem. But she wasn't worried about losing her phone. With the remote control, even if someone tried to swipe her phone, they wouldn't be able to get any information. "I'm a hacker after all, stealing from hackers." Bo Jiu shook her head, a smile still on her face. But there was one thing. These two people were indeed sent by Feng Yi. She had verified it before boarding the car. Hence the question was, why was she doing things this way? It had been a long time since she played such a game of cat and mouse. The youngster lowered her lids, blowing away her silver hair. She could play with them. The three of them had dinner together. The atmosphere had been great. In the end, the youngster suddenly said, "I lost my phone, and I lost it in my room. Don't you guys think it's weird?" The storyboard director had expected this question. "You can't have lost it in your room, right? Search again. Did you forget where you placed it?" "All right." Surprisingly, Bo Jiu was easy to talk to. But the next sentence was another shock. "My phone has a special program. Even if someone finds it, they can't switch it off. I'll call a few more times at night." It wasn't just a few times. The storyboard director couldn't fall asleep. Even though the phone's ringtone was pleasant, it kept ringing. She couldn't fall asleep. "Sir, do you still want to fight?" The hotel staff blushed as she looked at the handsome young man in front of her. Bo Jiu smiled lazily. "We'll continue at 1 p.m. So late at night? Why?" Bo Jiu smiled mischievously. "That's because that's when humans want to rest the most." The waitress expressed that she did not understand, but the young man gave her a lot of money, and she worked the night shift, so this job was not bad. After Bo Jiu was done, she walked back to her room. This time, she was really curious about the other party's goal. Perhaps it should be Feng Yi's purpose. In short, this was not a group training. 6 o'clock in the morning, the youth lying on the soft bed was still fast asleep. Usually at this hour, no one would get up. Except for the old men and women who got up early to go for a walk. But variety shows were different. This time, other than the storyboard director and cameraman, there were two more people, one of whom was in charge of clappers. "The lights are in place. The time is okay. Let's go." The moment the storyboard director finished her sentence, someone used the room card to open the door. Chapter 707. Variety shows would usually launch a surprise attack like this in order to capture the appearance of some people who had just woken up. Usually, this scene would have high ratings. But what happened to the surprise attack? Why did the lights in the room light up when they came in? The young man, who was supposed to be asleep, was sitting on the sofa in the middle of the room, swirling a glass of wine in his hand. He looked handsome and alluring. You guys finally made a move. But after saying this, Bo Jiu paused. She hadn't expected him to come in with a video camera. She hadn't expected that to happen. His undisguised shock was successfully recorded by the cameraman on the screen. Bo Jiu arched a brow. What's going on? We also want to know what happened to you. Can't you just obediently lie on the bed like a little prince who has just woken up? What was he doing attacking so early in the morning? I want to take a picture of your sleeping face. The storyboard director sighed. You look very barefaced and sleepy. Sorry, I didn't let you achieve your goal. Bo Jiu glanced at them. Is this a show? Such a high IQ. The storyboard director smiled bitterly. Did they discover something amiss with us and capture us? Bo Jiu lifted her lips. Something isn't right. Supreme Alliance's logistics isn't like this. You're blaming us? The storyboard director didn't appear on screen. She stretched out her hand, holding a mission card. Bo Jiu opened it and scanned the words on it. Spade Z. Welcome to the treasure hunt. The first mission you need to complete is to wake up your partner. Bo Jiu tilted her head. I have a partner? Tell me, who was the other person that was tricked by that fox phone E? You'll have to find it yourself. The storyboard director had a serious expression. We don't know who it is either. Bo Jiu smiled faintly. Beauty, be more sincere. It's useless to call me a beauty. The storyboard director blushed, but her rationality remained. Go, there's not much time left. His room number is on the mission card. What did it feel like to be forced to participate in a variety show and not be able to just leave like that? That was how she felt right now. She had thought it would be a game of cat and mouse, but it turned out that it was all Manager Feng's tricks. Now think, who was the other person who had been fooled? The Almighty was the first to be excluded. The reason was simple. Bo Jiu didn't think the Great Fox would have the guts to fool the Almighty. It could be Lin Feng or Coco. Programs like this usually focused on looks. It wasn't possible for Yun Hu. Both of their attributes were so strong. The venue would be cold. Variety shows should look at the effects of variety shows. Bo Jiu pondered as she walked. Holding the mission card in her hand, the way she lowered her head was surprisingly cute. The photographer was very happy this time. This room? Bo Jiu pointed at the door. The storyboard director nodded. Bo Jiu smiled faintly. Before we enter, can you pass me my phone? I'm not used to not having any electronic devices on me. When did you know I was the one who took it? The storyboard director glared. Bo Jiu thought for a moment. During dinner yesterday. The storyboard director. She had been listening to the ringtone all night. Why? Cell phones and wallets will be confiscated, as will those of other members. With this explanation, Bo Jiu understood. Since the other person was as unlucky as her, it didn't matter if she didn't have a phone. Time, take note of the time, the director reminded softly. Chapter 708. Beep. The sensor beeped. The room was completely dark. Especially at this point, the curtains were heavily drawn, blocking out all light. For a hacker, this was the most suitable operation. It was different from the others. Bo Jiu walked without a sound. But the cameraman and storyboard director couldn't see it. The camera lights were switched on. Under the dim light, Bo Jiu smiled, heading towards the only white bed in the room. The shape of the blanket could be seen, but no one could tell who it was. Bo Jiu's smile deepened. She took another step forward and reached out with her left hand. She wanted to pull the blanket off him, but Bo Jiu's smile deepened. But no one expected it. That person suddenly exerted strength, grabbing onto her wrist, yanking it in his direction. When the sound was heard, the lights were switched on. The face that appeared in his line of sight was handsome and abstinent, noble and elegant. Especially when he was wearing pure cotton pajamas, His black hair messy and sexy. His wildness was tinged with evil, but his aura was undeniably cold. Almighty? Regardless of how smart Bo Jiu was, she hadn't expected to see the Almighty here. Her eyes widened. He looked lazy as he watched her. He didn't move. It was probably because he had just woken up. But his eyes were very deep. The two of them were very close to each other. Their sharp noses touched. It was extremely ambiguous. The storyboard director was so excited that she kept taking pictures of the cameraman's back. The scene filled with pink bubbles could be used as a promotional video. Especially when both of them were very handsome, it gave people a sense of aesthetic impact. Qin Mo watched the person he was tugging. The youngster's skin was fair and alluring, with a hint of fine hair and a dazed expression. It was satisfying. Why are you here? Qin Mo's voice was calm, as though he didn't know there was such a variety show. That was the question she wanted to ask. Why was the person here the Almighty? Bo Jiu stood up, her movement suave. She tidied her collar before replying. Feng Yi tricked me. Almighty Qin, it's like this, we're doing a variety show. A little assistant was still explaining, standing beside the bed. She could only stare at the handsome face of her Adonis. The storyboard director furrowed her brows in confusion. That wasn't the script. Think carefully. Although the scene just now was very effective. But according to the script, Almighty Qin was supposed to be asleep the whole time. He just had to open his eyes. Moreover, they only dared to record Almighty Qin's participation in the show with his consent. But now, Almighty Qin was acting like he didn't know anything and even pulled Spade Z into his arms. The storyboard director was confused. Didn't they say that they would try not to let Almighty Qin have physical contact with others during the show? After all, Almighty Qin's identity was there. Almighty Qin didn't like to be too intimate with anyone. There was no need to drag Almighty Qin into this. The power of the Qin family was something that even their station head could not afford to offend. But now, why was Almighty Qin taking the initiative to get close to someone else? The storyboard director was still confused. Qin Mo had already heard the little assistant's words and stood up. Little Spade, stay behind. The rest of you can leave. Almighty Qin, no, we have to film. Qin Mo glanced at the camera, his fingertips brushing past the buttons of his pajamas. We have to film him changing? That isn't necessary. Why did you have to get Little Spade to stay behind just to change? This had to be added in the later stages. The cameraman, the storyboard director, and the assistant were all blocked by a door. But since this was an outdoor show, even if there was a script, it couldn't be too fake. At the very least, they had to film along. Hence, before the cameraman came out, he tactfully tossed a small camera over to the youngster. Spade, you film. Film what? Film the Almighty changing clothes? That was the matter of straightening his back. She hadn't succeeded yet. It wasn't possible for her to film along. Bo Jiu thought of an idea, aiming the camera at her face. As everyone can see, the Almighty is about to change. Let's wait for a while. Even though I want to see the Almighty's abs like all of you, it's more important to stay alive. With that, she turned the camera to the side, aiming it at the bathroom door. In reality, Qin Mo was standing on the youngster's left. He arched his body and removed his pajamas, revealing a perfect inverted triangle. I never knew you wanted to see my abs so much. Even though the image wasn't shown, the sound was recorded. Bo Jiu lifted her head, meeting a pair of eyes that were as deep as an ancient well. The black trousers and his upper body were bare, accentuating his slender legs. If such a scene was recorded, many people would have a nosebleed. The mermaid line was perfect. What is the mission? The Almighty finally put on his clothes. He was buttoning his shirt sideways. His handsome face. Bo Jiu still had her earphones in her ears. On the other side was the production crew. When they heard the commotion, all of them rushed in. This time, they could film the two of them in the same frame. The storyboard director wasn't sure why she was so excited. Bo Jiu glanced at the Almighty. Brother Mo, my mission is to wake the person sleeping in this room. I never expected it to be you. It seems like I've successfully helped you with your first mission. Qin Mo stuffed a hand into his pocket, looking more handsome than a celebrity. Bo Jiu was still sitting on the bed, leaning back slightly. That's right, but I think we should take a nap before moving on to the second mission. Ever since she had found out that her partner was the Almighty, she felt that it would be dangerous to participate in this variety show. Qin Mo didn't give the youngster a chance to lean back, pulling her up. You woke me up and now you want to sleep? That kind of conversation was something that only people who had a good relationship with each other could say. Right at this moment, there was a loud ding. The production crew handed over another mission card. The second mission? Bojo arched a brow. She opened the mission card and read the words on it. Other than our team members, there are other people in the game world. We have to find them before moving together to save Earth? Save Earth? It was a bluff. Seriously, you don't know the identities of the others, right? The production crew nodded. Bojo stuffed her hands into her pockets, a light smile on her face. Based on the style of your show, each team will choose 2 members. Lin Chentao and Sanpeng Jun will definitely be there, along with Almighty Xiao. 3 out of the 4 of them guessed correctly. The storyboard director and cameraman glanced at each other. He felt that the guest had already seen through him at the start of the show. What the hell was that? Cough. The storyboard director tried her best to maintain her composure. The person closest to you will need to take the 8 a.m. bus to find him. Bojo pointed at the Almighty's face. Forget about me, but is it really appropriate for Brother Mo to take the bus? The storyboard director didn't think it was appropriate. It was too obvious that he was an abstinent CEO. But the script was awkward. But it didn't matter. Getting the 2 of them to take the bus was a benefit for everyone. Besides, the next stop of the bus that passed by the hotel was a high school. This meant that most of the people taking the bus at this time were students. Of course, there were many middle-aged men and office workers. Hence, when Bojo and Almighty Qin walked in, some of the students who were still playing games glanced up. The second time they did so, they stilled. F***CK. What did she see? Almighty Qin. It wasn't just Almighty Qin, there was also Big Spade. Excitement was something that could be easily understood. Some of the girls had already started to cover their mouths. In fact, the production crew was slightly surprised. This was the South after all. If it was a member of Xiongnan, it wouldn't be surprising to see such a scene. Supreme Alliance was far in the north after all. Almighty Qin, it's Almighty Qin. Hurry and take a picture. I don't think it's a mistake. How could Almighty Qin appear here and take the bus? It can't be wrong, the person standing beside him is my Big Spade. There weren't many fans, just a few students playing games. Hence, the scene wasn't too chaotic. One of the office workers asked, "Which celebrity is he? He looks rather handsome." I don't know, that's weird, I've never seen him on TV before. The students wanted to educate them about the esports world, but after some thought, they decided against it. They were too busy to post it on their WeChat moments. More importantly, it wasn't just photos. He could still hear the conversation between the 2 men. The fans couldn't be happier. Forest Park, Brother Mo, who do you think would choose such a place to meet us? It was probably related to Lin City. Even though it was 8 p.m., there were still plenty of seats on the bus. Bojo sat by the window while Qin Mo sat beside the youngster. Lin Chentao, the storyboard director. Brother Mo, judging from the director's expression, we seem to have guessed it right again. The youngster lifted her lips, carrying the nobility of the Sucking Blood clan. The storyboard director was on the verge of breaking down, her chest almost crushed. The students watched from the side, unable to hold back their laughter. As a Supreme Alliance fan, they were extremely excited. Never in their wildest dreams would they have expected to meet their idol on the bus. Furthermore, it was such an idol. Almighty Qin, are you filming a variety show? One of the fans couldn't help interrupting their conversation. Qin Mo replied, his attitude polite yet distant. The production crew finally realized how real it was. The person they had seen just now must be fake. The Almighty with little spade must be fake. The fan was excited. I really like you, I really like you. Qin Mo changed his position. Thank you. 2 words. He probably felt that the response was too little. The fan's gaze dimmed. She turned towards the youngster before turning to Qin Mo. As a fan of Qin, I hope that Almighty Qin can stay away from some people. At this moment, Qin Mo smiled. His eyes were cold and calm as he said, "You can stop being a fan." The student was taken aback. He didn't expect to receive these words at all. His face was burning with embarrassment. She couldn't understand how Almighty Qin could be so disrespectful towards his fans. She didn't even consider the fact that he had gone overboard. The atmosphere was a little tense at that moment. The storyboard director didn't want any accidents during filming, hence, she shot a glance at the cameraman. The cameraman was well aware that this scene could not be allowed to continue. We'll alight early and change to another bus. The other students wanted to change as well. The original benefits were gone just like that. Why had that person interfered with Almighty Qin's friendship? Honestly, Almighty Qin's fans weren't like that. They knew that Almighty Qin was filming and had interrupted once because he liked him. But after interrupting repeatedly and making such a request that crossed his bottom line, he still had a look of resentment. Great, they had to change to another bus. There's no need. Qin Mo replied faintly. That's it. That meant that, even if the scene was broadcasted, he wouldn't be bothered. In that instant, the storyboard director understood why people liked Supreme Alliance so much. It wasn't fake. Perhaps, this was how people wanted to be themselves. In the bus, Bojiu held her chin. Since the weather in Lin City was warm, she only wore a black t-shirt, which was the most conspicuous in the crowd. But because of the person beside her, she was 3 times more conspicuous. More importantly, she hadn't had enough sleep because she had woken up too early. After driving for a short while, the students reluctantly got off the bus. She began to have difficulty opening her eyes, and it was obvious that her eyes were heavy. When Qin Mo tilted his head, he saw the youngster nodding down bit by bit. Actually, at this moment, the cameraman had already switched off his camera. He had waited until they reached the location. But in front of the camera, Almighty Qin reached out, placing his hand on the youngster's forehead. That kind of movement, when it appeared incomparably clearly. As the cameraman, he could only conclude one thing. They didn't seem to need to be a CP. Her every move was full of familiarity and love. If such a video was released, it would definitely cause some CP fans to cry out. And that wasn't the end. The youngster didn't seem to be completely asleep. She opened her eyes once, calling out, "Brother Mo." Almighty Qin agreed. The youngster leaned over, looking like a prince when he fell asleep. Especially since his head was resting on Almighty Qin's shoulder. Everyone knew how handsome and photogenic Almighty Qin was. The storyboard director started to get excited again, patting the cameraman's back repeatedly. There was no way the cameraman wouldn't record such good material. Especially when Almighty Qin tilted his head over, watching the head sliding down his shoulder. Without a second thought, he held the youngster's face, a faint smile on his lips. He seemed to be saying it intentionally for the audience. "Your skin is really smooth." The storyboard director. Chapter 709. Of course, they wouldn't let the guests sleep for too long. After about 10 minutes, they arrived at the station. Originally, he had wanted the storyboard director to call for them. However, she didn't have time to move. Almighty Qin, who was listening to the development of the script, glanced at her. Then he looked sideways, his thin lips close to the young man's ear. "Haven't you slept enough?" Although she was grateful for Almighty Qin's help, but wasn't Almighty Qin a little too close to Big Spade's ear? The storyboard director regretted not turning on the camera. It wasn't too late. He hurriedly gestured to his colleague. The cameraman immediately picked up the equipment in order to capture the most realistic effect. Through the camera lens, one could clearly see the young man's thick eyelashes tremble like a crow's wings when he heard the voice. Then he opened his eyes. There were also 2 strands of a hoge on the top of his head, which looked like a pair of cat ears. It was refreshing and handsome. This was probably the first thought everyone had when they saw the young man. However, that was when Almighty Qin wasn't around. Almighty Qin was here. The feeling of the entire scene had changed. When she had fallen asleep, she had been leaning against his shoulder. Now that she was awake, she tilted her head and the 2 of them almost kissed. Their temperaments were completely opposite. One was abstinent and noble, the other dazzling and handsome. But after they got together, he couldn't help but let his imagination wander. It was probably a problem with his posture. The way Almighty Qin turned his head to wake up Spade Z didn't look like a brother at all, but more like a boyfriend. Even the cameraman trembled. The storyboard director didn't show much on the surface, but she had long lost her composure. If she didn't hype up this couple, she would be letting down her job. As for Lin Chintao, he hadn't drunk a single drop of water since he woke up in the morning. Well, I just want to ask who is looking for me. Could it be that he's lost? Please don't have a poor sense of direction. Would he get lost while playing hero? Hey, why are you guys ignoring me? Say something. Otherwise, I won't play with you anymore. Are you guys really not going to talk? Alright, I'll ask you one last question. Is the person who comes more handsome than me? The cameraman glanced at his image and looked up at the sky silently. What should he do? After the program was broadcast, would there be a lot of people who would leave the fan club? They really didn't think that the rumored #1 assassin in the entire server would be so talkative. And this style. The cameraman focused on Lin Chintao once again. Almighty Lin immediately opened the cyan umbrella in his hands and really put on an assassin's outfit, which was an ancient costume. If the person who comes to pick me up is too ugly, just tell him to go back. I'm afraid he'll cry after seeing me. Cameraman. You really think too much. Originally, he was having a great time playing by himself. But Lin Chintao saw a bus pass in front of him. Furthermore, he was very familiar with the two people on the bus. How could they not be familiar with each other in the WeChat group? It's the two of them? Lin Chintao's gasp was captured by the cameraman. Lin Chintao was in disbelief. When has Qin Mo ever participated in a variety show? The whole world knows he doesn't show his face. Where did your production team find a fake product? Chapter 7:10. Since it's them, I have to keep a low profile. Everyone knows that Qin Mo is our enemy. I have to act like a master. Lin Chintao straightened his back. Am I domineering enough? The cameraman did not want to speak anymore. When Lin Chintao wasn't nagging, he gave off a cold and aloof aura. However, this cold and aloof demeanor only lasted for a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Lin Chintao looked at the scene of the two people kissing in the bus. He turned his head and asked, Is your production team gay? Cameraman. Who can take him away? How can the SARFT allow you to abuse single dogs like this? There's no justice in this. Lin Chintao was still grumbling. On the other side, Wuxia was already awake. She and Qin Mo alighted from the bus one after another. Follow the script. Qin Mo should be surprised to see the person in front of him. Unexpectedly, Qin Mo stuffed a hand into his pocket, looking at Lin Chintao nonchalantly. What a surprise! The two storyboard directors were on the verge of breaking down. Wuxia chuckled, walking over to tug at his assassin outfit. Your outfit is really an eyesore. Cameraman. Finally, someone had spoken his mind. F***CK. Don't touch me. Lin Chintao jumped to the side. Don't you know how to appreciate how handsome I am? Wuxia arched a brow. Honestly, I don't really understand. Qin Mo glanced over and looked at the members of the program crew. His tone was calm. Were you the ones who made him wear the costume? The storyboard director refused to take the blame as she shook her head vigorously. Lin Chintao affirmed, how could the production crew have such a handsome assassin outfit? I brought it myself. You have standards. Wuxia patted his shoulder. Lin Chintao was very proud. Of course, you don't know how poor this production crew is. I haven't even had breakfast yet. Oh right, should I tell you the next step of the mission? Speak. One word. Qin Mo was the only one who could make all the cameras focus on his face. Lin Chintao felt that he couldn't compare his looks with others. He was comparing his temperament. He raised his umbrella again, looking like an ancient hero. This person claims to be the most handsome and hero. He is the one who carries the face of the entire esports world. His motto is how can a man be called a man if he isn't burly? Wait, Where are the two of you going? Can you show some respect to your partner?
It was rare for the three of them to walk side by side on the road around the island.
If the girls and guys who often played games saw this, they would definitely surround them. The three gods of the esports circle were still alive. He was actually walking around the island. The scenery of Forest City was indeed beautiful. On one side was a blue sea and blue sky, and on the other side was a flowery villa. Occasionally, couples could be seen riding bicycles. Lin Chintao was the center of attention for the umpteenth time.
But he was a magnanimous gentleman, tilting his head to ask the two of them, "Don't you find the introduction a little familiar?"
At this hour, everyone was a little hungry. She opened a lollipop and placed it in her mouth. Open your WeChat group and you will know why it sounds so familiar. Chapter 7:11. Lin Chintao paused. WeChat group? You mean Sanpang? Bo Jiu didn't reply. Lin Chintao glanced at Qin Mo, feeling a chill. It was true. But why weren't you surprised when you saw me? Lin Chintao was shocked by the two of them.
Bo Jiu replied without turning, "You're too handsome."
With that, the storyboard director and cameraman glanced at each other. Both of them remembered how Spade Z and Almighty Qin had guessed the guest. The naive Lin Chintao replied, "Little Spade, as long as you maintain your truthfulness, we can be best friends for life."
Ha ha ha.
Bo Jiu paused. I can't believe I lost to him. I'll win it back for you in a while.
Qin Mo's voice was calm, but the way he pulled the youngster over seemed extremely intimate.
Look ahead when you walk. Don't turn back all the time. Bo Jiu chewed on her lollipop.
"Oh,"
she replied obediently. The entire crew felt the same way. Almighty Qin wasn't participating with his crew. He was bringing a boyfriend. Lin Chintao also felt like he was the third wheel, but he still had to ask, "Don't tell me your production team only hired guys?" The storyboard director nodded. Lin Chintao turned. Aren't you going to admit it's a gay show? The cameraman. I think I'm looking at the most handsome man in esports. Bo Jiu paused, stuffing a hand into her pocket as she watched the scene unfold before her. Those who weren't in the know would assume Uncle Bird had made an appearance since Sanpang was dressed in gold and silver and was driving a red Lamborghini. Beside him, Almighty Xiao was the truly handsome one. With his gold-rimmed spectacles pushed up, he looked like a Prince Charming. Sanpang was probably trying to attract the cameraman's attention, blowing his 3 strands of hair confidently. When he caught sight of Qin Mo, he exploded. Archenemy! The crew. The next second, Sanpang caught sight of Bo Jiu. Little Spade, I miss you so much. Come to Xiangnan. We can give you everything except for the vice-captain position. The storyboard director had no choice but to whisper, "We thought you guys weren't familiar with each other since you haven't spoken much in the competition." This was a reminder to them that they should greet each other when they saw each other and not be so crude. Unexpectedly, Sanpang didn't understand the true meaning behind it at all. Instead of answering, he asked, "Why do you guys have such an illusion? We often shout on WeChat that we're going to the Japanese server." Oh. Fatty is spouting nonsense. Lin Chentao's face was solemn. We aren't close at all. The production crew. Do you believe it yourself? If he wasn't familiar with her, he would hug her. Almighty Xiao walked down, his posture calm, but his gaze paused on Qin Mo. There's another guest. Thankfully, there were still people who remembered the existence of the script. Lin Chintao, who do you think it is? Almighty Xiao turned his head and asked. Lin Chintao covered Fatty's mouth. Don't ask such things. Before he could finish his words, he saw a person walking over. Black hair, a high-nose bridge, and a deep smile in his eyes, just like in his memory. Captain. Lin Chintao was truly stunned. Chapter 7:12. Bo Jiu arched a brow. He wasn't their captain during the competition. Indeed, it wasn't him. Qin Mo tilted his head, glancing at the person. He is their former captain, Rao Rong. Former captain. Didn't that mean he had retired? Bo Jiu glanced over.
Someone whose name the Almighty remembered had to be skilled.
I'm back.
He smiled at Lin Chintao.
I'm back again.
It was just a few words, but it had a deep meaning.
This was another arrangement by the production crew.
Some people said that in the esports industry, there were only 3 people that could be considered the soul of a team.
Supreme Alliance's Qin Mo, Xiangnan's Almighty Xiao, and this person Rao Rong. In reality, he was facing the same problem as Yin Wuyao. Older players would have to retire from the competition. This was the decision of the club and the investors. Some people felt that the current team was strong enough and it would be better to bring in some fresh blood than to keep the veterans. That was the competition with Supreme Alliance. They were suddenly struck with a realization. They had to get Rao Rong back. Without him, they might lose in the future competitions. Of course, at the start, no one had been able to contact Rao Rong. Only Lin Chintao. As a fanboy, he had been writing letters to his captain. Everyone in the alliance knew. Lin Chintao had been waiting for someone to return. And now, it was finally a success. Of course, it wasn't a good thing for the other teams.
Rao Rong's godly skills were still around.
Welcome back. Just 3 words. Rao Rong broke into a smile. The next second, he turned towards Qin Mo, his lips lifting slightly. Have I been away from the industry for too long? You actually came to participate in a variety show.
Qin Mo stuffed his hands into his pockets, remaining silent. Lin Chintao wiped his reddened eyes, speaking in a serious tone. Captain, listen to me, the iceberg Qin Mo has been acting strangely recently. The production crew allowed them some time to catch up.
Almost a minute later,
the cameraman lifted his camera once again. However, in this 1 minute, Bo Jiu felt that the aura emanating from the Almighty was clearly different from before.
Was it because of Rao Rong? At this moment, all the cameras were in position. The recording of the program continued. All right, the mission has been activated.
After the members of the battle team have completed the first mission, they will be able to activate their respective energy spheres.
Now, please check your team's mission.
The first 2 teams were quite normal. It was a common guessing game that tested tacit understanding in variety shows.
But it was different for Bo Jiu. She must have taken the wrong mission card.
Mouth to mouth for 3 seconds, separated by a piece of paper. What kind of situation was this? The storyboard director was puzzled when she saw the card's contents. He immediately turned around and looked at the director, who had arrived late because he was drunk. The director was very serious and expressionless. He couldn't possibly tell his subordinates that he was drunk by his old classmate and didn't know what mission he had changed. Could he? The storyboard director wanted to discuss if they should change the mission since Almighty Qin didn't like to be so intimate with anyone. Qin Mo had already taken the mission card from the youngster's hand, his voice calm as he asked the person beside him, "Where's the paper?"
Chapter 7:13.
The storyboard director wasn't the only one shocked. Even the main director widened his eyes in disbelief. Boss Qin had actually agreed to the mission instead of freezing him with his gaze. This time, all the drowsiness and hangovers were gone. When the main director had first seen Qin Mo, Feng Yi had brought him over. Feng Yi had been the one who had brought him over. At that time, the main director had been too eager for talent. With such a handsome face, he should be filming. Hence, he hadn't even asked about his background. "Stop gaming and join my crew, I'll make you famous." At that time, the youngster who was sitting on the chair had only tilted his head and lit a cigarette. His tone unhurried. "I invested in the drama you are currently filming." The main director. Even now he could still remember Boss Qin's gaze. He had been a high school student back then, but why had he been so imposing? In conclusion, it was because of his good looks and money. But because of that gaze, the main director had always felt that Qin Mo was the perfect male lead in his script. And now, he had actually agreed to such a mission. The main director was agitated. He was directing the filming personally. They were treating this scene as a kissing scene. "Wait a minute." Bo Jiu smiled faintly. "Brother Mo, we aren't suited for such a mission, right?" Qin Mo arched a brow. "Why? Do you think I'm taking advantage of you?" "I'm afraid your fans will say I'm taking advantage of you." "That's easy. I'll take the initiative." Qin Mo lowered his head and pressed Bo Jiu against the coconut tree fiercely. It looked like they were about to kiss. The girls in the filming crew blushed. As CP fans, they were on the verge of screaming. Lin Chintao stood at the side in a daze. Once again, he secretly confirmed with someone. This really isn't a gay show. The cameraman had forgotten to adjust the long view, standing there in a daze. That wasn't how the script was supposed to be, right? Under the camera, Bo Jiu glanced up. His face was already very close to hers. His deep gaze seemed indifferent as he turned and whispered into her ear. How can we end the mission quickly if we can't complete it? His words struck a chord in Bo Jiu's heart. Before her rebirth, she had always liked to be in nightclubs. He was no stranger to this kind of gameplay. This was his favorite way to heat up the atmosphere while drinking. It was the same when he played Truth or Dare. In addition, foreign countries were more open than domestic ones. But when Bo Jiu played, she was always with the girls. Let her and the Almighty. Bo Jiu was still thinking. The man in front of him had already lowered his head. First, he stuck the piece of paper on her face, then kissed her lips. Qin Mo seemed to always be like this. He acted as if there was no one else around. Like a demon deacon walking out of a comic book. Indifferent, cold, yet so handsome that it could cause the surrounding people to scream. Some of the girls in the program team couldn't help but cover their mouths. This was probably the first time Almighty Qin kissed someone in front of everyone. Although it was separated by a piece of paper. But that kind of pose was enough for fans to fantasize about for a long time. Since she wasn't prepared, Bo Jiu stilled. The breath was very familiar, and it did not belong to her. It was slightly cold and invasive. She could even feel his tongue sweeping across the seam of her lips because their lips were stuck together. It was a vicious blow. Chapter 7:14. Perhaps, it wasn't obvious from the camera. But the storyboard director was so close, it didn't seem any different from a real kiss. Bo Jiu wanted to retreat, but the camera reminded her that if she retreated and dropped the paper, she would have to do it all over again. It would be easier to do it in one go. She had to maintain the position for 3 seconds. Bo Jiu watched the handsome face that was inches away from her. When the Almighty turned, his eyelashes brushed past her face like feathers, tickling her heart. Her mind seemed to have been sucked dry, blanking out. All that was left was the sound of her heartbeat. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. It wasn't easy for her to endure the 3 seconds. Bo Jiu pulled herself away, her fair and clean face not flushed, still carrying her usual suaveness. However, her gaze was sluggish. Qin Mo glanced at the youngster, a gentle and intoxicating smile on his face, his voice casual. The taste isn't bad. The storyboard director. Taste. Ah. Her nose was bleeding. Why was she so agitated? Calm down. The Almighty was just saying it. It was mainly because of the taste. The Almighty had added such ambiguous lines. Was he trying to send the fans into a frenzy? The main director was pleased, nodding repeatedly. Good, the expression and lines are on point. Director Wang, this isn't a movie, the assistant reminded softly. The main director's expression changed instantly, turning solemn. The expression isn't bad, don't edit this scene, it would be perfect for a variety show. Lin Chintao stood beside them and watched. He then turned around and glared at the cameraman. The cameraman glanced upwards. This time, he didn't have the confidence to say that they weren't a gay show anymore. Qin Mo didn't look any different from usual. After leaving the youngster with the piece of paper, he looked at the camera. His cold and abstinent temperament didn't change. He was high and mighty, but it was hard to dislike him. I've completed this mission. What about the next one? The storyboard director coughed heavily, reminding everyone to focus. It was weird, they had filmed celebrities kissing before, so why were they so easily aroused in front of Almighty Qin? No, they had to hold back. Collecting love. This time, Rao Rong was the one to announce the mission. His voice was very pleasant, low and magnetic with a hint of laughter. You must be very hungry. Now, in front of you are the mangoes and coconuts that the old farmers bought wholesale from the market. Help the old grandpas sell these things, and you will be able to eat lunch. Hearing this, the guests had different expressions on their faces. Sales. Bojo arched a brow. Xiao Sanpang was very serious. There's no need to sell them. I'll eat them all. Tao, hurry up and buy them all for me. I don't have money. My SIM card and bag were confiscated by the production team. Did you forget? Lin Chen Tao was still roasting. Fatty, we're enemies now. Do you know what that means? Little Spade, come here. Let's discuss how to sell coconuts with our looks. F*CK, what happened to being enemies? Xiao Sanpang. Don't fight with me for Little Spade. The storyboard director. Split into 3 groups. The quality of the lunch will be decided based on the amount of money sold by each group. This sentence was shouted by the director with a loudspeaker. Chapter 7:15. Brother Mo on the other side. The youngster had already escaped while the two of them were still bickering. With a hint of mischief in his handsomeness, he said, "Let's hurry up and pick a cart that's easy to push. There aren't enough customers here. It's not suitable for selling coconuts." The cameraman cleverly recorded the youngster's words on camera. Both of them were men of action. There was no sound at all. When Lin Chen Tao finally won the argument, he turned around with a smug look on his face. Pinch. Rao Rong watched his expression, rubbing his temples. You haven't changed at all. After saying that, he smiled and said, "Let's go, selling things is more important." Xiao Sanpang jumped up to Xiao Shan and said with a serious face, "Captain, do you think they'll buy all my coconuts if I play a game for them later? When you go shopping and see someone playing games, will you still buy it?" Deity Xiao's aura turned cold. Xiao Sanpang's eyes lit up. Of course not. Crew. Looks like his IQ is still there. I will fight with him. The production crew. Xiao Deity held his forehead. Shut up. Every team had their own unique characteristics. Perhaps this was the reason why they were invited to join the cast. Even director Wang, who often made shows, felt that this show was really interesting. Although the guests were following the script, they were not stiff at all. The storyboard director glanced at the main director. Director Wang, are you sure they're following the script? The camera turned to Supreme Alliance, who was the first to leave. He could vaguely hear the youth's clear voice. Hello, excuse me, where is the nearest tourist attraction nearby? The scene zoomed in with the sound. Bo Jiu was asking for directions. The other party was 2 girls dressed like students. They were probably here to travel. They parked their bicycles by the roadside and were about to take out money to buy Coke. When they saw the handsome young man who suddenly appeared in front of them, they couldn't help but be stunned. This is too handsome ah. The cameraman could clearly see the blush on the girls' faces. There was also a small voice that responded, "If you walk this way, you'll reach the scenic beach." Thank you. Bojo smiled. Then, she seemed to have thought of something. If you guys are thirsty, do you want to buy a coconut? It suits fair-skinned girls and is healthier than cola. That was against the rules. Especially when the young man was smiling at her, she didn't want to see his eyes dim. One of the girls cupped her face and asked, "How much for one?" Bojo. This question stumped the youth. Indeed, how much should they sell for? My brother is over there. He'll name the price. Bojo pointed towards the figure not far away. Only then did the 2 girls realize that there was someone even more handsome. Moreover, they were of different styles. That person raised his eyes, and the corners of his eyes were stained with indifference. He was simply like a vampire who had walked out of a manga. The only incongruous thing was that there was a cart of coconuts and mangoes beside him. So handsome. The girl couldn't help but say, "You 2 brothers are so handsome." Bojo laughed lightly. I think so too. Ever since they met the young man, the 2 girls' heartbeats had never slowed down. Bojo brought them to the Almighty. She wasn't sure if it was her imagination, but the Almighty's gaze seemed colder than before. The 2 girls also felt that China Mo wasn't easy to get along with, but the more he behaved like this, the more attractive he was. How could he be so handsome? Chapter 7:16. Brother Mo, how much are we selling coconuts for? Bo Jio hasn't forgotten about the important matter. Qin Mo paused, his voice calm. 100. 100. 100? So expensive? Is this a scam? The way the two girls looked at them had obviously changed. Bo Jio stilled. 100 is too expensive. Expensive. Qin Mo frowned, as though he was asking what was expensive about. That was when Bo Jio remembered that the Almighty's mineral water cost more than 100 yuan per bottle. If the Almighty was the one setting the price, ordinary people might not be able to afford it. She turned and smiled at the two girls. We're new to this industry and aren't familiar with the market. Just pay us the price you usually pay. It's 15 here, 20 if you go to the scenic area. Some old grandpas on bicycles sell them for 25 each. Those are all relatively remote places. After the two girls breathed a sigh of relief, their faces began to blush again. Bo Jio smiled faintly, passing 2 coconuts over. I'll take 25. Thanks for the information. You're welcome. One of the girls was obviously blushing. Qin Mo watched, the coldness in his eyes deepening. After Bo Jio took the money, he reached out and grabbed the youngster's collar. Bo Jio tasted the long-awaited feeling of being dragged like a sack. There were many people at the scenic area. But it wasn't the afternoon. Even though the people at the beach weren't in a frenzy. There were around 30 to 40 people. It was obvious that this car wasn't going to sell. Qin Mo scanned the area, his gaze landing on the restaurant by the beach. He dragged the youngster into the restaurant. Brother Mo, even though I want to eat, I don't have much money on me. Can I use your watch as collateral and redeem it in the future? Bo Jio was starving. She allowed the Almighty to drag her, her hand caressing her tummy. The storyboard director aside, even the cameraman felt that Spade Z would be more obedient in front of Almighty Qin. The indescribable contrast would make Spade Z's fans happy. But what was Almighty Qin trying to do? Was he really going to use his valuables to exchange for a meal? Sir, I'm sorry, this is a restaurant, may I ask? The receptionist was French and didn't speak Chinese. It was enough to tell that this restaurant was really high-end. Qin Mo chuckled. From the moment he started to pronounce it, there was a hint of romance unique to French. She had a beautiful voice. The key was, what did Almighty Qin say? No one in the production team knew French. Bo Jio glanced at the storyboard director's confused expression. She smiled faintly as she inched closer to the camera. She adjusted her collar before saying, Brother Mo is planning to sell the coconuts and mangoes to this restaurant to solve the old grandfather's sales problem once and for all. But we are still in discussion and the outcome isn't clear yet. As soon as the young man finished speaking, the receptionist gestured for him to proceed. Bo Jio continued to translate. He wants to bring Brother Mo to the person in charge. The storyboard director. Their variety show even had the smell of a business meeting. No, wait a minute. Big Spade. You understood everything just now? This was French, not English. It couldn't be that common. Bo Jio smiled at the camera. Please call me Bookworm. What's Big Spade's best subject? Bo Jio was about to reply. Qin Mo, who was walking in front, seemed to have heard the question. He turned over, his voice calm. He's best at climbing walls and physics. Chapter 7:17. She could still understand physics. Which subject was climbing walls? The storyboard director glanced at the youngster in confusion. Bo Jio didn't want to say anything. She was starting to suspect that the Almighty's confession had been a dream. Time trickled by. There wasn't anyone in Jiang City who didn't know about young Master Qin's business skills. In less than 10 minutes, Qin Mo walked out with the French shop manager. The manager was extremely passionate, thanking him repeatedly. He wasn't a local after all, and the French restaurant required the freshest fruits. French cuisine placed great emphasis on the use of ingredients. It was a famous saying that second-rate ingredients couldn't be used to create good dishes. French cuisine used local ingredients, which resulted in different tastes in the north and south. Hence, the most important thing was to eat the right food at the right time of the day.
It would be best if someone could deliver the ingredients every day, especially the ones that had just been plucked from the ground. Then, they would be able to taste the ingredients. Bo Jiao sat on the sofa lazily, a smile on her face as she watched the scene unfold. What should she do? The sight of the Almighty discussing business made her want to bring him home. It was just a show. In reality, there were many ways to sell the fruits. However, the Almighty had obviously chosen this one out of consideration for the elderly who were still dragging their carts around in such hot weather to sell coconuts. Qin Mo watched as the youngster sat there. Without hesitation, he walked over and placed a hand beside her ear. He lowered his body, his magnetic and lingering voice pleasant to the ears. Hungry. A long time ago. Bo Jiao lifted her lids, her gaze landing on the thin lips not far from her. She couldn't help but remember the paper separating them just now. She tilted her head to avoid his deep gaze. Qin Mo was about to raise his hand, but he retracted it. His gaze dimmed because of the youngster's repulsion. Qin Mo never revealed his emotions. Hence, in front of the camera, his handsome face was the main focus. No one noticed that in that moment, Qin Mo's pupils had constricted. Both the storyboard director and the cameraman could sense an obvious change in Almighty Qin's aura. It seemed much colder. Lobster or steak? Choose one. Qin Mo straightened his body and stuffed one hand into his pocket. In that instant, he seemed to have recovered his indifference that kept people at arm's length. This seemed to be the Almighty Qin they knew. It was probably because Almighty Qin had laughed so many times today that they had forgotten his original appearance. But, Almighty, our crew didn't provide any lobsters. The storyboard director spoke softly. Qin Mo glanced over. To thank us, the other party wants to treat us. The other party? Who? The restaurant manager smiled at the right time, and the romance of the French was triggered. The people from the production team were already shocked, because they had not expected that the guests on the show would be treated by someone else. Are all top students able to do this? It remained to be seen whether Brainiac could do that. French cuisine was all about appetizers. Just by watching Almighty Qin raise his glass and chat with the chef, they felt that they had brought a variety show to new heights. Chapter 7:18. The storyboard director glanced over at Almighty Qin. Since he had been watching them, she didn't dare to be too loud. It's with the main director. The production team won't be broadcasting it. It's just for you. I understand, but how did your main director get a photo of Brother Mo when he was young? Bo Jiao arched a brow. Based on her understanding of the Almighty, such a photo should have been hidden and not shown to anyone. The storyboard director lowered her voice. The main director said that a good friend from the industry had shown it to him, but he didn't want to reveal his friend's name. But based on his description, she should be a beauty. Beauty? Another good friend of the main director? Movie queen popped into her mind. She reached out to pat the storyboard director's shoulder. Your production team isn't bad. They have a bright future ahead of them. The storyboard director. What was with the strange feeling of being complimented? Just because they had gotten a photo of Almighty Qin, they had a bright future ahead of them? Big Spade. How dare you say you aren't interested in Almighty Qin? Hurry and get the photo. I'll help you keep an eye on Brother Mo. Don't let him come over. The youngster stuffed a hand into her pocket, looking as handsome as ever, smart and sly. The storyboard director went to look for the main director. The main director was still immersed in the ice cream kiss. He turned to the storyboard director with a serious expression. This scene isn't bad. It has the effect of a variety show. MMH, we can let them kiss a few more times. The storyboard director. Boss, have you ever seen a variety show with kissing? Where's your integrity? Half a minute later. After explaining the situation, the storyboard director finally retrieved her boss's phone. She walked towards Bo Jiao anxiously. You have to keep this a secret from Almighty Qin. Don't worry. Bo Jiao winked. So handsome. The storyboard director coughed heavily before handing the phone to the youngster. A photo that was obviously taken in secret appeared on the screen. The photo was obviously taken at the Qin family's old mansion. The main character was dressed in a pure white British suit and had delicate features like a doll. He was sitting in the garden in the summer,
with a cup of hot tea on the table covered with plants. He was holding a book in his hand. He probably noticed that someone was taking a picture of him in front of him, so he moved the book to the side and looked at the camera as if he was looking at some bacteria. His arrogant dog-like appearance was simply unique in the world. In an instant, it struck her nerves. The rumbling of thunder in the sky was no different from what he was feeling now. This is Almighty? Bo Jiao didn't know how she managed to ask that question. Probably because she had never seen the youngster speak like that. The storyboard director nudged her shoulder. Were you touched by the Almighty's cuteness? It wasn't just cuteness. Bo Jiao took another glance at the photo before turning to look at the Almighty. It was an indescribable feeling. The storyboard director continued, the Almighty's cuteness when he was young would make anyone want to rub his head and kiss his cheeks. Bo Jiao took a moment to recall the incident. That day, her father had suddenly wanted to introduce her to a friend of the same age. That in itself was strange enough. Since she had only been around the keyboard since young, she wasn't good at making friends. Chapter 7:19. But the moment Bo Jiao saw her little friend, she forgot about the little rocket. Her father was lying to her. How was he her age? He was a puppy doll. Especially when he spoke, he was very polite. Compared to the doll in front of her, a pet like the little rocket was really boring. Hence, she couldn't control herself and pounced on him the first time they met. But it was obvious that her little friend didn't understand her passion. Instead, he rubbed his forehead, using a cold and noble voice to warn her, "Get up." At that time, she was really possessed. She felt that her little friend was too cute and couldn't control herself. She kissed his face. At that time, her little friend's expression changed, his angry little face turning red. He looked at her as though she was 1,000 germs, wanting to destroy her on the spot. At that time, Bo Jiao felt that her little friend didn't understand her passion, which was why he despised her. She stood there aggrievedly, rubbing the bump on her head. She took out her best things to please the doll, asking him, "How much do you cost per kilo? What do you want?" The doll seemed to be very interested in her keyboard and gave her 3 words in a very light tone. Since she was a doll, she had a temper. Bo Jiao understood. "I want to buy you, you can be my pet." Bo Jiao bent over and took out her little treasure. Listening to her words, the doll couldn't stand it anymore and knocked her head. "Are you an idiot? You don't buy people by weight." "Oh." Bo Jiao was disappointed for a moment. "Then I won't give you money. I'll take care of you in the future." The doll's veins popped. "I don't need you to take care of me. Don't be shy." She understood the doll's feelings. The doll glared at her for a while. "You'd better shut up right now." "Fine, you won't let me talk because you're shy." I know, you just ate a lot of chocolate. You like it, right? I'll go steal some more." At that time, Bo Jiao felt that the doll was hard to coax. She couldn't understand his thoughts at all. But since she was prepared to take care of him as a pet, what else could she do? She couldn't control herself, she had to pamper him. Since then, every time she saw a pet, she would press him down, rub him, and kiss him. Her pet was good at everything. It was beautiful, looked good when it ate, and read books that gave her headaches. The number of times it called her an idiot was increasing, but it was still very handsome. It was just that it had a bad temper and was easily shy. It was always embarrassed in front of outsiders. In the past, Bo Jiao had been puzzled. What a good relationship they had. Why was her canine pet always embarrassed? Bo Jiao understood now. If the Almighty knew that he was the one who always pushed him down, the Almighty would probably close his eyes and throw her into the sea to feed the sharks. Seeing that the youngster hadn't spoken for so long, the storyboard director stirred. "What are you thinking about?" "I thought about how I had pushed the Almighty down when he was young. It was best if no one knew about this. She would be happy on her own. An unexpected reunion with his childhood pet. Moreover, this person was an Almighty." The feeling was rather subtle. Honestly, Bo Jiao had never expected the adorable puppy doll to grow into the Almighty. Chapter 720. It was probably because the youngster had turned back too many times with a seductive expression. Qin Mo glanced up, the corners of his eyes arching as he walked over. Bo Jiu had never felt guilty in the past, but this time, it was probably because she had pounced on the Almighty often when she was young and had even gone overboard. She couldn't relate her puppy to the Almighty in front of her, hence, her reaction was a little too much. She tossed the phone back to the storyboard director as though it was a hot potato. Seeing the youngster's actions, Qin Mo narrowed his deep eyes. What's that? The main director's phone. Bo Jiu chuckled lightly, trying her best to divert the Almighty's attention. Do you want an ice cream cone? Qin Mo retracted his gaze, focusing on the youngster's smiling face. The thoughts he had suppressed started rising again. A certain someone's behavior of getting close to him really made him want to do something that he shouldn't have done. For some reason, Bo Jiu reached out to touch the bridge of her nose when she saw the Almighty's expression. It was dangerous. F***ck, little spade. Hurry and take a look. Fatty is starting to take off his clothes. From afar, Lin Chintao's laughter could not be more obvious. Even though she didn't understand what was so good about Fatty's naked body, it was better than dealing with the Almighty. Hence she ran. Before she ran, she didn't forget to turn to allow the storyboard director to leave. The storyboard director couldn't tell what was strange about Big Spade after seeing the photos of the Almighty when he was young. But she couldn't pinpoint the exact reason. The news of her meeting her childhood pet seemed to be possessed, popping up every now and then, harassing Bo Jiu. Qin Mo reached out, tugging the youngster's collar. How can Zhao Sanpang look? You have to be so proactive. Fatty was speechless. Hey, Qin Mo, I'm right here, how can I not look? I'm so handsome. Ha ha ha, that stomach of yours is indeed interesting, Lin Chintao added mercilessly. Fatty blushed. What do you know, it's called abs. Bo Jiu caressed her tummy before caressing the Almighty's. She glanced up with a mischievous smile. Almighty Fatty, look, this is what I call abs. Qin Mo glanced at the hand that suddenly appeared in front of his abdomen. Even though the hand was slender and beautiful, it was much smaller than his own. It was as fair as jade, causing his eyes to sink. This guy must be doing it on purpose. Touch him? Or should he choose this position to touch? Heh. Qin Mo didn't smile easily. Lin Chintao watched from the side, an inexplicable chill running down his spine. Speaking of which, if you pluck fur from the tiger's belly, you'll either be killed or eaten by the tiger. How could little Spade not know such a simple logic? Zhao Sanpang watched her actions as well. He felt as though his body was being humiliated, but he couldn't say anything. That scene was also very funny. Of course, the cameraman would not miss it. This kind of scene was also good for the ending. The main thing was that the young man's expression when he raised his chin was very arrogant and cocky. He gave off the vibe of a young master from the capital. Chapter 721. Yet, Qin Mo asked the youngster in a low voice, "Is it nice to touch?" Bo Jiu was still in a daze as she nodded seriously. It's really nice to touch. Ever since she found out the Almighty was her pet, she didn't have to worry anymore, right? She had pounced on him so many times when she was young. It was only right to touch him. The youngster's eyes narrowed into slits as she smiled. Qin Mo inched closer to her ear. Ha! Lin Chintao shook his head. Even though he wasn't sure why, he felt as though little Spade was doomed. But a certain someone was behaving like the young master of a rich family, smiling at Qin Mo, smiling at the tiger? How could the tiger tolerate you? Little Spade, did you lose your intelligence? Next is the last mission. The filming crew watched as the sky darkened. Let's have a swimming competition. Lin Chintao had already accepted it. As long as it wasn't gay content, he could accept it. Besides, he had already tried the terrifying death chamber. What else was there to be afraid of? He wasn't the one swimming, his captain was around. The storyboard director hesitated. Should Big Spade or Almighty Qin be the one to reveal herself? The latter was hopeless. After all, Almighty Qin was a formidable existence. She couldn't afford to offend him. She could only turn her head and look at the youth. Bo Jiu replied, "I'm afraid of water and can't swim.
Not even with a lifebuoy, I'll faint. With that, Qin Mo glanced at the youngster. Even though he hadn't gotten all the information. But Qin Mo still knew the basics. Young Master Fu was indeed a good-for-nothing. But he had his own strengths, such as swimming. Qin Mo's gaze deepened, his gaze sweeping past the youngster's face. Bo Jiao allowed the Almighty to scrutinize her without a change in expression. In the end, she sighed. Besides, I'm injured. What kind of injury? Qin Mo arched a brow. Bo Jiao lifted her black t-shirt, biting down on her lips. Red mark, do you see it? Qin Mo's gaze landed on the inch of fair skin. From his angle, the youngster's flat and fair abdomen was obvious. Even his belly button seemed to be different from others. It was small and white. Not to mention the curve on both sides, which was enough to make people go crazy. He did not see any red marks. All he could see was that the guy in front of him was really asking for a beating. Qin Mo reached out and pressed the youngster's shirt back to its original position. Right now, he only had two thoughts. First, he would never let the youngster undress in front of so many people, especially in front of the camera. Second, at night, he would let a certain someone touch him all over. Bo Jiao couldn't understand why her puppy was glaring at her so fiercely. To think that she had predicted that there would be a swimming segment, so she had done something to her body just to avoid such a situation. Ah, right, she forgot that the current dog-type pet still had the aloofness of the Almighty. Bo Jiao smiled mischievously. He turned towards the storyboard director. I'll swim for our team. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.